It was not possible to take a walk that day. We had been walking for an hour in the garden with no leaves in the morning. But after lunch, Mrs. Reed, when there were no visitors, ate early. The cold winter wind brought dark clouds and rain so heavy that more outdoor exercise was not possible. I was happy about it. I never liked long walks, especially on cold afternoons. I hated coming home in the cold evening with cold fingers and toes, and a sad heart because Bessie, the nurse, would scold me. I also felt sad because I was not as strong as Eliza, John, and Georgiana Reed. Eliza, John, and Georgiana were now sitting with their mother in the living room. She was lying on a sofa by the fire, and with her children around her, for now they were not fighting or crying. She looked very happy. I was not allowed to join them. She said, "I am sorry, but I must keep you away for now, until Bessie tells me, and I can see myself, that you are trying hard to be more friendly and act like a good child. I must not let you have the same privileges as happy, content children." What did Bessie say I did? I asked. Jane, I don't like people who argue or ask too many questions. And a child should not speak to adults like that. Sit somewhere and stay quiet until you can talk nicely. Next to the living room, there was a breakfast room. I quietly went in there. It had a bookcase. I quickly took a book that had pictures in it. I climbed onto the window seat. I sat with my legs crossed like a Turk. I pulled the red curtain almost shut, and I was hidden away. The red curtain closed my view on one side. On the other side, the window showed the gray November day. Sometimes, while I turned the pages of my book, I looked out at the winter afternoon. Far away, the sky was full of mist and clouds. Close by, the lawn was wet, and the bushes were beaten by the storm. The rain kept falling, pushed by the strong wind. I looked back at my book, Buick's History of British Bird Star. I did not care much about the words, but some of the first pages caught my attention. These pages talked about where the seabirds lived. They talked about lonely rocks and cliffs where only birds lived. They described the coast of Norway, full of islands, from the south to the North Cape, where the Northern Ocean, in big, swirling waves, boils around the empty, sad islands of farthest Thule, and the Atlantic waves crash into the stormy Hebrides. I couldn't ignore the mention of the cold shores of Lapland, Siberia, Spitsbergen, Nova Zembla, Iceland, and Greenland. It talked about the wide, icy Arctic zone and those far, lonely places covered in frost and snow, where thick ice, built up over hundreds of winters, covers tall mountains around the North Pole. These places of white ice made me think of my own ideas, like shadows in my mind, unclear but very strong. The words in these first pages made me look closely at the pictures that followed. They showed things like a rock standing alone in a wild sea, a broken boat on an empty coast, and the cold moon looking through clouds at a sinking ship. I don't know what feeling I had about the lonely graveyard with a stone, its gate, 2 trees, and the low sky surrounded by a broken wall with a new crescent moon showing the evening time. I thought the two ships, not moving on the still sea, were ghost ships. I quickly turned the page when I saw the picture of a demon holding down a thief's heavy bag. It was too scary for me. Another scary picture was of a black creature with horns sitting far away on a rock, watching a crowd standing near a hanging gallows. Each picture told a story. Many of the stories were hard for me to understand, but they were very interesting. They were as interesting as the stories Bessie, the nurse, sometimes told us on winter evenings when she was in a good mood. When Bessie set up her ironing table by the fire in the nursery, she let us sit near her. While she ironed Mrs. Reed's lace and nightcap, she told us stories about love and adventure from old fairy tales and ballads. Later, I found out some stories came from books like Pamela and Henry, Earl of Moreland. With Buick on my lap, I felt happy in my own way. I wasn't afraid of anything except being interrupted. But the interruption came too soon. The breakfast room door opened. "Boo! Madam Mope," yelled John Reed's voice. Then he stopped. He thought the room was empty. "Where is she?" he shouted. "Lizzie, Georgie." Calling to his sisters, "Joan is not here. Tell Mama she has run out into the rain, bad girl." It's good I closed the curtain, I thought. I really hoped John wouldn't find where I was hiding. John Reed wouldn't have found me by himself. He wasn't very smart or quick to understand things. But Eliza stuck her head in the door and said right away, "She's in the window seat, of course, Jack." So I came out right away because I was scared of being pulled out by John. "What do you want?" I asked, shyly and awkwardly. "Say, what do you want, Master Reed?" he said. "I want you to come here." Then he sat down in a big armchair and waved his hand, showing I should come stand in front of him. John Reed was a schoolboy, 14 years old, for years older than me, as I was only 10. He was big and heavy for his age. His skin was pale and looked unhealthy. He had thick features on a big face, heavy arms, and large hands and feet. He ate too much at the table, which made him feel sick and gave him a dull, tired look with puffy cheeks. He should have been at school now, but his mother had brought him home for a month or two because of his delicate health. Mr. Miles, his teacher, said John would be fine if he didn't eat so many cakes and sweets sent from home. But his mother didn't agree. She thought John's pale skin was from studying too hard or missing home. John didn't love his mother or sisters much, and he didn't like me at all. He bullied and hurt me, not just 2 or 3 times a week, or once or twice a day, but all the time. Every part of me was scared of him, and my whole body would freeze up when he came near. Sometimes I was confused by the fear he caused because I had no way to stop his threats or hits. The servants didn't want to make their young master angry by defending me, and Mrs. Reed didn't see or hear what he did to me. Even when John hit or yelled at me right in front of her, she didn't notice, though he usually did it behind her back. I always obeyed John, so I went up to his chair. He spent about 3 minutes sticking his tongue out at me as far as he could. I knew he would hit me soon, and while I waited for the blow, I thought about how disgusting and ugly he looked. I wonder if he saw that thought on my face, because suddenly, without saying a word, he hit me hard. I stumbled, and when I managed to stand again, I stepped back a bit from his chair. "That's for being rude to Mama earlier," he said, "and for hiding behind the curtain, and for the look in your eyes just now, you rat." I was used to John Reed's bullying, so I never thought of talking back to him. All I cared about was how to handle the hit that would come after the insult. "What were you doing behind the curtain?" he asked. "I was reading," I answered. "Show me the book." I went back to the window and got the book. "You have no right to take our books," he said. "You're a dependent. That's what Mama says. You have no money. Your father left you nothing. You should be begging, not living here with children like us, eating the same food and wearing clothes that our mama pays for. Now I'll teach you not to touch my bookshelves. They're mine. This whole house will be mine in a few years. Go stand by the door, away from the mirror and the windows." I did what he said, not knowing what he was planning. But then I saw him lift the book, ready to throw it. I jumped aside with a cry, but it wasn't fast enough. The book hit me, and I fell, hitting my head on the door. My head was bleeding, and the pain was sharp. I wasn't scared anymore. Other feelings came over me. "You wicked and cruel boy," I said. "You are like a murderer. You are like a slave driver. You are like the Roman emperors." I had read Goldsmith's history of Rome and knew about Nero and Caligula. I had compared them to John in my mind, but I never thought I'd say it out loud. "What? What?" John shouted. "Did she say that to me? Eliza, Georgiana, did you hear her? I'm going to tell Mama. But first," he ran at me. I felt him grab my hair and shoulder. He was like a desperate, wild person. I really saw him as a tyrant and a murderer. I felt a few drops of blood run down my neck, and I was in pain. The pain was stronger than my fear, and I fought back wildly. I don't know exactly what I did with my hands, but he screamed, "Rat! Rat!" and started shouting loudly. Help was close to him. Eliza and Georgiana ran to get Mrs. Reed, who was upstairs. She came with Bessie and her maid, Abbott. They separated us. I heard them say, "Dear, dear, what a wild thing to attack Master John. Has anyone ever seen such anger?" Then Mrs. Reed said, "Take her to the red room and lock her in there." For hands grabbed me right away, and they carried me upstairs.